What's going on, everybody? What's happening? What's shaking? What's doing? It's Friday, July the 30th, 2021, 12:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the VoiceMann Studios in Toronto, Canada. This is episode 196 of McRae Live. Episode 196 of McRae Live. Great to see everybody here today. It's Friday. The weekend is almost upon us. And maybe it is upon you, depending on where you are around the world. So today's show, I wanted to talk about the JonBenét Ramsey case all the way back in good old 1996. Now, maybe there might be some of you out there who have either never heard of this case, have totally forgotten about this case, or maybe you're too young and you don't know about it. I don't know. In 1996, I was 17. I remember this case very well. It was all over the tabloids and all over People magazine, and it was just the end of 1996 into 1997, and it was a big deal. It was a big deal. I mean, this is before the internet, for all intents and purposes. The internet existed, but it's not like it is now. There was no social media. It was a very, very different world 25 years ago. And this is a case that has it's one of those cases. It's never been solved. Big air quotes. Over never, I should say. And it's one of those cases that, in the 90s, what happened in the 90s was something, the 24-hour news cycle where you could get, news every day, all day, any time of day was really a new thing. Back in of course, the 80s and the 70s, you'd get news at 11 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night, and in the newspaper the following day, essentially is when you would get it. I mean, you would watch the 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news, and check the newspaper the following morning. I mean, that was essentially your news. Now, and it started really in the late 90s, or excuse me, the late 80s, early 90s, that 24-hour really inundated cycle, really began to happen. And this was one of those cases, like the O.J. Simpson trial. You can throw JonBenét Ramsey in there. You can throw, Princess Diana's funeral and the death of her and the whole, it was just a whole, it was new. It was reality television before there was reality television. And this is a case that's always fascinated me. Now, look, I'm not going to go through the entire case here, okay? I don't know who knows about it. I don't know who doesn't know about it. But I am going to read a little bit from the Wikipedia page. Now, I know it's Wikipedia, and you always got to take things with a grain of salt because it is edited by the general public. But knowing what I know about the case, this sounds pretty legit from what I remember. So we're going to go through a bit of it here in case some of you don't know, and then I'm going to give my commentary on it because there is no doubt in my mind, like literally no doubt whatsoever in my mind that JonBenét, that she was not murdered by some intruder that broke into their home. Now, I know there was a documentary on television about, well, I guess it's 5 years ago now, almost 5 years ago, because I believe it was the 20th anniversary of her death. I know there was a documentary 5 years ago that they had real legit experts on. I mean, like people that have done real legit shit, who came to the conclusion that it was her brother that killed her. Now, not necessarily saying it was intentional in terms of premeditated, like I want to murder my sister, but they came to that conclusion. And the 3 or 4 hour documentary, I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube, is compelling. I mean, it's very compelling. Of course, The family completely denies that. The brother denies it. The brother, who's now, I think, in his mid to late 30s, had a unusual interview on Dr. Phil. He seems a little weird. Doesn't mean he did it, right? I mean, if we want to look at this, we have to look at this as objectively as we possibly can. Just because the brother is a little fucking weird and maybe incredibly socially awkward, maybe on the spectrum, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying, perhaps but at the very least, socially awkward doesn't mean that he killed his sister, right? It doesn't mean that. It literally does not mean that. But when you watch the documentary, it is very compelling. Obviously, he, along with John Ramsey, who's the dad, who's still alive. Patsy died in 2005, who was the mother. Obviously he denies it. They sued. I think it was CBS that did that documentary. They sued and all that kind of stuff. And saying no, it's, you can't say this, you can't. And I believe he won. I believe Burke is the brother's name. I believe they won. But there is no doubt in my mind. No fucking doubt in my mind whatsoever, signed, sealed, and delivered, that I don't know who killed JonBenét. I don't know who killed her, right? I can kind of lean towards certain things. We'll talk about it. But there is no doubt in my mind that Patsy Ramsey, the mother, wrote that ransom note. No doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. And I've looked at this case, and again, I'm not an expert. I'm an armchair detective. I'm a professional voice actor. I work in the entertainment industry, okay? So, take that with what you will, all right? I mean, I'm not a seasoned detective, but I think I'm a pretty intelligent guy, fairly. My viewers may beg differently. I don't know. But, I'm pretty astute, and I'm pretty intelligent, and I'm pretty observant, and I'm try to be as objective as I possibly can. And, this case is fucking weird. And, but it's so, it's just so, anyways, if you don't know, if you're not old enough to remember, let's go through it together and a little bit of it anyway. And I'll give you some commentary here, okay? So we're going to go to the other screen. This is coming from Wikipedia, all right? It says, JonBenét Patricia Ramsey, August 6, 1990 to December 25th, 1996, was an American child beauty queen, for those of you that don't know or maybe had forgotten, who was killed at the age of 6 in her family's home in Boulder, Colorado. Now, this was such a big deal because she was so beautiful, but it also, her death also kind of brought up the other side of the story, which was, should we be, should we be putting our children, should we be sexualizing our children into these beauty pageants? Now, I'm not here to really have a debate about that, although I think that is part of the larger story at the end of the day, because she's 6 years old, and listen, if you live in a state or a city or wherever, if you live in a place where beauty pageants are a really big deal, if you are somebody that was a beauty pageant contestant yourself from the age of like 5, 4, I don't know, and you grew up through the pageant system, you may totally support it. You may, I mean, there was that fucking show on TLC, like Pageant Moms or whatever it is. I mean, it's a fucking thing, it's a thing. And I totally understand that. But we cannot deny that, and I don't know what pageants are like now, but certainly JonBenét, I mean, she's out there with a skirt up to her mid-thigh and dancing away, and she's a pretty young girl, right? You can totally believe that in another 25 years, she's going to be a heartbreaker for sure. I mean, she's very an attractive young girl, right? Very pretty. And, that opens the doors to a lot of fucking weird, fucked up people out there, pedophiles and, whatever, right? I mean, that we cannot deny that those types of people, get all about that kind of shit. So when her death happened, it sort of opened the floodgates to, because of course the parents were saying, no, it was an intruder that broke into the house. There's evidence for it. There's this, that, and the other. Maybe it was somebody that was about her pageants and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it was Bob, down the street or whoever, right? I don't believe that for 1 second. Don't believe it for 1 second. So there is that angle to it. She was a 6-year-old beauty pageant contestant. A long handwritten ransom note was found in the home. Her father, John, found the girl's body in the basement of their house. I like this because Wikipedia basically gives you the Cliff Notes version. But we'll talk about it. Her father, John, found the girl's body in the basement of their house about 7 hours after she had been reported missing. She had sustained a broken skull from a blow to the head and had been strangled. A garrote was found tied around her neck. The autopsy report stated that JonBenét's official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation. That's, associated with craniocerebral trauma, craniocerebral trauma. I don't know how to say that. Anyways, brain trauma, okay? Her death was ruled a homicide. The case generated nationwide public and media interest in part because of her mother, Patsy Ramsey, yes, herself a former beauty queen, had entered JonBenét into a series of child beauty pageants. I haven't even read this, and I already said that. The crime is still unsolved. Yeah, right. And remains an open investigation with the Boulder Police Department. Please. It's not open. It might be open, maybe open officially. The Boulder Police initially suspected that the ransom note had been written by Patsy and that the note and appearance of JonBenét's body had been staged by her parents in order to cover up the murder. In order to cover up the murder. In 1998, the police and district attorney DA both said that JonBenét's brother Burke, who was 9 years old at the time of her death, was not a suspect. JonBenét's parents gave several televised interviews, but resisted police questioning except on their own terms. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? It just doesn't make any sense. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. In October 2013, unsealed court documents revealed that a 1999 grand jury had recommended filing charges against the Ramseys for permitting the child to be in a threatening situation. Again, not necessarily the cause of death, not necessarily they actually killed her, but they were indicted. John and Patsy were also accused of hindering the prosecution of an unidentified person who has committed the crime of murder in the first degree and child abuse resulting in death. However, the DA determined that there was insufficient evidence to pursue a successful indictment. Now, okay, so here's the thing. So, let me go to the other screen here. Here's the thing. So if you watch that documentary, the one that the Ramsey family sued because they came to the conclusion that it was Burke. Besides coming to the conclusion that it was Burke, okay, there's other, which is their professional opinion based on the evidence that was presented to them. They had a lot of professionals in their fields there, okay? And based on the evidence that we have, this is the conclusion that we've come to. But of course, that is their, albeit professional, but it's their opinion based on the evidence. If you don't agree with that, there's other stuff in that documentary that is factually based objectively, like what the DA was doing and how the DA handled the case and what, and all the shit that was like slipped under the rug and put away and all this kind of stuff. There's real, almost borderline criminal activity to get the Ramseys off completely. It's fascinating to watch. But here's the thing that just floored everybody. And right from the get-go, there is a 2.5 page ransom note. There is a 2.5 page ransom note. The FBI at the time, I believe this is true. The FBI at the time said that it was the longest ransom note in FBI history. Nobody had ever seen a ransom note like this. Now, you may be thinking, well, who cares? Okay, so it's a 2.5 page ransom note. The problem is, and this is fact, fact. This is not opinion. This is actual fact. Even the Ramseys would agree to this, okay? The 2.5 and I hone in on this immediately because this to me just is so absurd. You know, it's like OJ, okay? Everybody fucking knows OJ Simpson did it. Yeah, I know he got off. I know that they spun the case and, you know, if it don't fit, you must acquit. I mean, I know all that shit, okay? But everybody in their fucking uncle knows that O.J. Simpson murdered Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, I believe his name was. I mean, come on. You know what I mean? It's the same thing here, okay? It's the same thing here, as far as I'm concerned. That 2.5-page ransom note was written on Patsy Ramsey's legal pad. It was written from a Sharpie. Where's the fucking Sharpie? I have a Sharpie. Here we go. We have a Sharpie right here. Sharpie, all right? Or I don't know if it was a Sharpie, but it was something like that. That was in the Ramsey's house. Now, let's look at this logically. Let's apply Occam's razor here, okay? Let's think of this logically. It is a 2.5-page ransom note. Let me bring up this, the other screen here. And let me just move this over here for a second. Oh, she's so sweet. Poor kid, man. Fucking pisses me off. Anyway, let's scroll down here because you are going to see the... Okay, so here is the ransom note. Now, if you want to go online and look at the ransom note yourself, by all means, go ahead and do it. I could read it, but I don't want to read it. It'd take up way too much time. Remember, this is a ransom note. Now, usually, I mean, criminal psychologists will tell you ransom notes are no more than like a fucking paragraph. You know what I mean? Because they get to the point, boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? Maybe half a page, maybe. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. All right. So here we have this is a ransom note. 2.5-page ransom note written on Patsy Ramsey's legal pad, right? A notepad, okay, that was in the kitchen of the Ramsey house with a marker from the Ramsey house. Also, there was a practice note. This is all true. This is not my opinion. Okay, this is not assumption. There was a practice note written from the same legal pad, the same notepad, crumpled up and in the garbage. Okay? When you look at the note, experts have, and I totally can see this, experts have been able to see that at the beginning of the note, it looks like somebody, and these are handwriting professionals. It looks as when you want to disguise your handwriting, right? You know, and we've all tried to disguise our handwriting. Maybe we've all, it sounds so bad, but I mean, like, you know, maybe you're trying to be Santa Claus for your kids or something, right? Or you're, you know, or you're trying to be the Easter Bunny or, you know, whatever the case is, right? At some point in our lives, we probably all tried to, you know, do something like that, right? The shorter you have to write, the better, right? And experts have pointed out that at the beginning of this note, it looks as though somebody is deliberately trying to disguise their handwriting. But as you go further down the page, that suddenly goes away, right? You know, the certain tiny idiosyncrasies of how letters are formed and the spaces between the letters. It's a real art, guys. I mean, it might seem like, this seems so kind of, but it's a real fucking thing. People could pick you out of a fucking lineup based on your handwriting because of the nuances and details of how you form letters and the patterns of how you form sentences and syntax and all that kind of stuff, right? And they said, these experts said that at, like, you know, the first half looks like somebody's, but then it kind of goes away the further you go down because you get lazy. To try and keep that up for a very long period of time is incredibly difficult, incredibly difficult. They've pointed that out. They've compared letters and handwriting examples from Patsy and the Ramsey note. Fuck, you know, I mean, I know it looks, pretty identical. Pretty identical. Just saying. Fucking read this note. Go ahead and read this note online. It's absolutely crazy how ridiculous this is. Also, the amount they wanted, right? For her, the amount of money that these this I love this. Listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. There are similarities of things that are written in here to movies that the Ramseys were familiar with. There is also the money they asked for. You will withdraw $118,000. First of all, John Ramsey was a multimillionaire, okay? And they want just $118,000? And why so specific? Why 118? Why not 120? Did you know that $118,000 is, if not identical, almost the exact number to the bonus that John Ramsey received that year? Like a Christmas bonus or something like that? Did you know that? I mean, let's instill a little common sense here, okay? Also, think about this. You break into somebody's house, you murder their child, and you sit down in their kitchen and take your time writing a ransom note on their own pad with their own pen, not knowing if at any moment somebody could walk into the kitchen. Like you're so relaxed and so calm that you do a practice note. You're like, nah, let me put that in there. Let's see here. Listen carefully. We are a group. The fuck you doing? Knowing you just murdered the child? I mean, nobody does that. Nobody does that. Insane. Yeah, let me go to the other screen here. The ransom note. According to statements that Patsy gave to the authorities on December 26, 1996, she realized that her daughter was missing after she found a 2.5-page handwritten ransom note on the kitchen staircase at the Ramsey family's Boulder residence. The note demanded $118,000, equivalent to $194,000 today. Wow. John pointed out to police first on the scene that the amount nearly identical to his Christmas bonus of the prior year. Why would you do that, John? Which suggested that someone, I see, he was trying to kind of, right. Which suggested that someone who would have had access to that information would be involved in the crime. Investigators looked at several theories behind the dollar amount demanded, considering employees at Access Graphics, which is where he worked, who may have known the amount, and yada, 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 yada. They go on. It actually goes fairly in depth for a Wikipedia page on the article. So let me just go to the other screen here. Okay, so the body was found in the house. JonBenét Ramsey was not taken out of the house. Her dead body was found in the basement, wrapped up. And who found the body? John, her father. And this is all fact too. There was a police officer there that asked them to search the house again. They were waiting for people to show up or whatever. It was a contaminated crime scene because, and here's, in the note, it specifically says, don't call the police. Don't tell anybody. What's the first thing Patsy Ramsey does? She calls the police. She calls her neighbors. Her neighbors come over and walk all through the house, contaminating the crime scene. If your child, look, I know that if this was really happening, you'd be thinking to yourself, holy fuck, I got to call for help. I got to do something. But that's the first thing she does. So people are walking through before the police ever arrive. And in Boulder, Colorado, this was fairly new. It was a botched investigation. That's another fact. Even the Boulder police will now admit that. It was botched. It was botched. So, and one of the mistakes that this police officer made, her name was Linda Arndt, I think. She asked John to search the house again. Or, people to search the house again. And the first thing he does is makes a beeline right to the basement, right to the room where JonBenét is found. He doesn't, and he gets his friend to come with him, I believe. So he has a witness. They go right into the basement, right, like as if he was going, it was like he needed to go into the basement to get a beer from a fridge. So what would you do, right? If I asked you to go into your basement, and let's say you have a fridge in the basement, and to get a beer from that fridge, you would literally go into the basement, head right to the fridge, open it, and grab the beer. You wouldn't waddle and dawdle around looking for the beer, right? So what does John do? Go search. He goes right down, right to the room where she's found, opens it. Oh my God. You know what I mean? A little strange. Picks up the body, contamination, brings it upstairs, contamination, lies it on the floor, you know, where people have been trenching through. I mean, the whole thing was contaminated from the get-go. And Linda Art, there's a great interview from about 1999 with her, where she says, she doesn't say it outright, but you know what she's trying to say when you read between the lines. She totally said that when John brought that child upstairs and laid it on the ground, they had sort of this unverbal exchange. They just looked at each other, and she knew. And she didn't say anything publicly during this interview. I don't know where she is now, but she said that she knew that she didn't say this, but basically what she is saying is, I knew that he had something to do with it. I just knew. It was too fucking weird, you know? And if you are, why would the demand $118,000 and leave the body in the house? Eventually they're going to find the body. Eventually they're going to find the body. So what is the incentive to give this group of small foreign, any money at all? Why, you know, because you, as the murderer, would have to hope that they wire you the money before they find the body. And that probability is so low that why would you even take that risk? Why would you not take the body with you? Let's say she's already dead. Well, take her with you anyway. Take her with you anyway, and then just fucking, you know, as awful as this is going to sound, take her with you anyway and then dispose of the body. But if you leave the body there, why would I do that? Why would I give you money? Makes no sense. You know, the interviews they've done. Oh my God. And I can tell you this, something they did in that documentary, which has been, again, the Ramsey family sued CBS. But in that documentary, you might even be able to find a clip of it. They take the 911 call to an audio engineer, an audio expert, and they EQ it and go through a ton of stuff to try, because once Patsy supposedly hangs up the phone, she doesn't actually hang up the phone. There's a few more seconds, or maybe 10 seconds or whatever, of you could hear her talking to somebody else. And so they brought that 911 call to an audio engineer who was able to sort of EQ it and go through it and play around with the frequencies and stuff and try to bring out that muffled, muddy audio a bit more to make it a bit clearer and who we can hear there. Now, as somebody who has worked with audio for over 20 years, I can tell you that this was really interesting. And although it is a matter of, I'm not 100% convinced that the conclusions they came to on what the voices were saying is absolutely 100%. It's hard to make out. You can make out certain syllables and certain things, and, you know, but it's kind of like, it's a little bit of that EVP thing with ghost hunters, right? You know, where you might hear like, you know what I mean? And then the ghost hunter goes, oh, it sounds like ketchup. And then when you play it back, you yourself, yeah, it does. I hear ketchup. You know, that's just bullshit stuff, right? You know, we can have a debate on whether there's something to the electronic voice phenomena or not. That's a whole other debate. But the more compelling stuff is the stuff that's really clear, that there is no debate. Yeah, you know, you hear dog and cat. It's like, oh, they're saying dog and cat. Well, I don't know about that. No, they're clearly saying dog and cat. So to be fair, getting the voices out of this was a little bit like that EVP kind of thing. But what is more intriguing to me is what is very clear to me as a more youthful, younger voice. And, the Ramseys had said that Burke was asleep the entire time. Like when Patsy got up in the morning and she found the ransom note and she's like, oh my God, John, get down here, or whatever the case is, Burke was in bed the entire time. Burke was in bed when they made that 911 call. Well, I don't know about that, because when she supposedly thinks she's hung up the phone and there's a bit more afterwards, you definitely hear what sounds like a male voice, which would be John. You know what I mean? And you hear what sounds like a younger voice. Now, they've deciphered that the younger voice is saying something to the effect of, what's going on, or, what's happening, or something like that. And maybe it is, but it definitely sounds youthful. I can tell you, I've worked with audio for over 20 years. I've mixed and mastered, commercials that go to broadcast. I don't usually do that. I'm usually just the voice actor. But I have done that. So I'm very familiar with how to EQ and how to, bring out certain frequencies, and how certain EQs and frequencies will affect certain audio levels and things like that. I'm not saying I am the world's first or the world's best authority on it. I'm just saying that kind of stuff intrigues me because I have over 20 years of experience with it. And listening to this, I was like, yeah, if I was a betting man, I would say that's a kid. That's a kid. That's not John. That's not Patsy. That's a kid. I don't know if that's, Burke. I don't know if it's, somebody else. I don't know, but that's definitely a male child for sure. It sounds young. Yeah. The frequencies 100%. I would bet money on it. I'm that confident, and they're that confident as well. Well, does that mean that the Ramseys murdered JonBenét? No, it doesn't mean that, but they lied about Burke being in bed. There's a high probability that they did that. And also too, here's something that's strange. And this is fact. So the night before this, right, which was Christmas night, they were making the rounds in the neighborhood, visiting family and things like that. They were all dressed up, blah, blah, blah. They got home at like 9 or 10 at night. The official story is that, JonBenét was asleep. John carried her upstairs, put her to bed. And then, they all went to bed themselves because they were leaving the next morning to fly to Florida or somewhere to get away. Because obviously he has a private jet. This guy's very wealthy. And the next morning, when, I don't know if it was when Linda Arndt arrived or one of the investigators, when they got there, they noticed that Patsy Ramsey was dressed in the exact same thing that she wore the night before. The exact same thing she wore the night before. Now, listen. Again, let's instill some logic. Is it possible that Patsy Ramsey was dressed to the nines, and then, when she got home, she took off all that, went to bed, and then got up in the morning and dressed in the exact same thing she wore the night before? Yes, I guess it's possible. Is it possible that Patsy Ramsey came home and thought, oh, I'm just so tired. I don't want to get into my pajamas. I'm just going to, I don't know, keep all my makeup on and get into bed in these, really nice fancy clothes. Is that possible? Sure. But is it probable? Is it probable? Not likely. So what is more likely? What's more likely? Let's think about this rationally, right? She probably never went to bed, right? She probably came home, shit hit the fan, and then her and John, I'm speculating, and her and John likely stayed up all night trying to figure out how the fuck are we going to handle this? What the fuck are we going to do? And then they spent a long time crafting that ransom note, so much so that, they had a practice note, right? And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, she calls the police. Or however early it was, 7:30, I don't know what it was. somewhere around there. She's in the same getup because she never went to bed. You know, it is a little strange. It is a little strange. What would normally happen? Like, let's think of this logically, right? If you see me, say we're having a party, right? I come to your place and I got a nice suit. It doesn't have to be a suit. A nice pair of pants, collared shirt, sweater, whatever, right? It's Christmas time. We're hanging out. You come over to my place the next morning at 8 a.m. I leave your place at like 9. You come over to my place at 8 a.m. and I'm dressed in the exact same thing. I open the door. I'm like, oh, hey, man, come on in. Because there's something crazy, right? Somebody's missing. Come on in. What would you assume? Well, Dave didn't go to bed. He's dressed in the same fucking clothes. He did not go to bed. That's a little weird. That's a little strange, right? The ransom note to me, is the smoking gun. 100%. Now, have the Ramseys tried to spin it with other people in the neighborhood and looking at the Santa Claus that took an interest in JonBenét, have they looked at other strange I believe there were quite a few registered sex offenders in that area, if I'm not mistaken. But one of the things that I think we all have to keep in mind is, two things can be true at the same time, right? They're not necessarily mutually exclusive to each other, right? Two things can be true at the same time and separate. You can have 20 registered sex offenders in that area and the parents still be responsible for a cover-up. I mean, that and it have nothing to do with anybody in the area. You can still have a creepy, weird Santa Claus who takes an unusual interest, a guy who plays Santa, a creepy, weird, unusual guy who plays Santa Claus, who takes an unusual interest, let's say, in, JonBenét, and him still have nothing to do with what happened. Both things. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't investigate that and you don't look into that hardcore. Absolutely. But I come back to the ransom note. It's a weird, the FBI said, we've never seen anything like this. Like, we've never seen this. This is ridiculous, and how it went on and on and on and on. And, it felt like it was overcompensating and they examined it. They examined Patsy's handwriting to the ransom note and there were distinct similarities. Of course, Patsy denied it. She denied it. Absolutely. The idea that the documentary with that the Ramseys sued because they came to the conclusion that it was Burke. I don't know if it was Burke, but it was a compelling conclusion, and I think there's a high probability. I think it's possible because Burke, when you hear about the certain people that were interviewed, Burke didn't like her sister very much. I'm not saying he hated her, but, Burke was a little, again, I don't know if he's on the spectrum. He certainly, as an adult, is socially awkward, for sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's on the spectrum, although he might be. I don't know. But he resented, there was a certain resentment from Burke to his younger sister. And, I mean, it's a fact that he would take shits. Like, Burke would actually, and this is not like somebody who's like an infant. This is a fully grown, like, 9-year-old, or 8-year-old or 7-year-old. Like, I mean, this is somebody who should know not to take a gigantic dump in your sibling's bed just because you're having a tiff with them or something. And Burke would do that. That's like, now again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but if you were to speak to somebody with that level of education, they would know that that's next step. Like that's real serious. Like that's a big issue. We all get into fights with our siblings, even at that age. I mean, we all do. But to make a statement like that is a cry. Do you know what I mean? there's a real issue here. There's a real issue here. And he was known to do that. He swung a golf club at JonBenét. Now, apparently it was an accident. Was it? I don't know. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things, albeit circumstantial, but there's a lot of smoke in and around how Burke felt about his sister. So the documentary from 5 years ago concludes, and of course I think there's two documentaries now. There's one that really favors the intruder side. John Ramsey's own son now is really sort of picking up the mantle, because John's very old now. I think he's in his 80s, if I'm not mistaken. He's not going to be around much longer. And there's no doubt that I think his own son from a previous marriage really kind of feels like he needs to take on the mantle and really kind of, and listen, does John Ramsey's son from a previous marriage really believe that the Ramseys were completely innocent and all that? Well, I'm sure he does. I mean, it's his dad, right? Maybe not, though. Maybe not. I don't know. But I think there was some sort of documentary about, really focusing on the intruder side and all that kind of stuff. I just think it's dog shit. I don't buy I'm sorry. I do not believe that an intruder would walk into that house, murder that child, leave the body there, take the time to write a 2.5-page ransom note, demand the specific amount of your bonus the previous year, leave the body there and leave. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. Is it possible? Of course it's possible. Of course it's possible. But is it probable? No, it's not. And even the FBI has said this just does not happen. Is that bump on your shoulder, is it cancer? Well, yeah, sure, it could be, but is it likely? No. What is it? Well, it's probably a bruise you got when the fucking ball hit you there. Or you know what? Maybe you should, go easy on the workout, or maybe you should, like, there's 50 other things that are way more likely, and I just don't buy it at all. When you combine that she was in the same clothes, that it was written in the same, in the house, a practice note, So anyway, they came to the conclusion that what may have happened, because I believe during an autopsy, and one of the big things for years, and this was sort of, was that JonBenét Ramsey was sexually assaulted. They believe that she was sexually assaulted. They addressed that in this documentary with experts and whatnot, and they came to the conclusion that that may not have been the case. There was DNA that didn't point to John, Patsy, or Burke that was found in her underwear. But as these experts concluded, and again, for some of you out there that may be reaching, or that may be on team intruder, right? Thinking that, well, no, it was totally an intruder. And the DNA that isn't anybody in the house found on her underwear, yes, that should be taken into consideration. But if there's anything that they were able to prove with one of the foremost DNA experts in the world in that documentary, is that when you buy a package of underwear, when you buy a package of boxers or panties or whatever, if you take that package, and they did this, they took that package to a DNA lab, they did a swab, and they found DNA. Probably from the packaging, probably from the hands or the hair or whatever. I mean, DNA, it takes so little to get DNA, on anything. They actually found foreign DNA on a pack. It was packaged. They brought the package. They bought it like, I don't know, Walmart or something. Girls' panties, brought it to this DNA lab. They did a swab, and they were already gloved, ready to go. They did a swab. They found foreign DNA. So now, does that mean that it was definitely not an intruder? No. But it goes to show you that we cannot rely solely on the foreign DNA that was found on her panties, because, I just bought a pair of new boxers a couple of weeks ago, a pack of new boxers. If I took that right out of the store into a DNA lab, they'd probably find fucking foreign DNA in there, there too, right? So we can't rely solely on that. And I'm like, well, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was an intruder. And there's a whole thing around the sexual assault thing too that they were able to kind of debunk. But I just wanted to come on here and talk a bit about this, because I wanted to make it very clear that I don't buy it for one fucking second that an intruder walked into that house, murdered JonBenét, left the body there, and then decided to sit down at their kitchen table and write a 2.5-page ransom note like they were a guest, like they knew they were there. You know what I mean? Like it's the probability is low. Of course, anything's possible, but it's about what is probable. What is probable? And that ransom note says it all. There's too many coincidences. There's too many unusually strange things. And you know what? The police know. The police know. They know. The FBI knows. Patsy's dead now. She died of cancer in 2005, actually a long time ago now. But they know. They know. Now, whether it was Burke, sorry, I keep getting sidetracked. So what they assume in the documentary is that, and again, this is purely speculation, but that they came home. They didn't go right to bed because during the autopsy, they found undigested pineapple in JonBenét's stomach. And she loved pineapple, and it wasn't unprecedented for her to, or they found something that would be perceived as that could very well be that. And there was a bowl of milk and pineapple on the kitchen table when police arrived. So that would tell us, well, obviously it hadn't been in her system very long, right? And they're following the evidence and painting a picture of what may be likely. Maybe they came home, had some pineapple, Burke got jealous maybe, or something happened there and Burke whacked her over the head with a police flashlight, one of those big mag lights that was sitting on the counter. Because, and again, this doesn't mean this is exactly what happened, but they're trying to piece some certain things together, which I find very interesting, and that it may be probable. Just because Burke may have been responsible for his sister's death doesn't necessarily mean that he intentionally did it. Doesn't necessarily mean he's like, I'm going to fucking murder my sister tonight. It doesn't necessarily mean that at all. It could very well have been an accident. And the family, being the affluent family they were, having the huge reputation they do, panicked. And we can't have this. We can't have this. Holy fucking shit. What the hell are we going to do? We can't be those people. I mean, listen, when you get into a position of money and power, it's a very different level. It's a very different level. The vast majority of people who live on this planet will never understand the level and the world that people live in when you are millionaires/billionaires. You will never understand it. It's a completely different world. Void of like, unless you come from, but then again, that's not even a guarantee either. There are people that come from the ghettos and come from, poverty that become hugely successful that end up just living in that world and forgetting where they come from. It's a different world with a different set of rules. It's a different game. So, maybe your first instinct or my first instinct would be like, oh my God, and to call the police right away. But when you work at a level where you're getting a bonus of $120,000 a year and you're worth, $10 million or, whatever the case is, and you got a private jet you can fly to your, holiday home on, that's a different world. That's a completely different world. And so your priorities and how you think and how you operate is completely different. Completely different. And, yeah, it seems strange to us, but it might be very, oh my holy we can't have our neighbors thinking we're murderers. We can't have our neighbors thinking we're neglectful and we're abusive and we can't have this. What about our reputations? What about the money? What about my job? I can't go to work with people thinking that no. That's what they think of. That's what they think about. And John to this day is still a multimillionaire. Even richer now than he was 25 years ago. So that's what they think of. So yeah, I totally believe that Burke could have accidentally done something like that. And then they planned over the next 9 or 10 hours, being up all night, how to figure out what they're going to do. And that's what they did. I think that is, when you look at the evidence that's been presented, it seems, again, I'm not saying Burke did it, but I'm just saying it seems logical when you instill some common sense based on the inconsistencies that we have found, especially with Patsy Ramsey, her handwriting, the ransom note, the notepad, the pen. I mean, everything was, look, a murderer or doesn't usually go to the scene of the crime and then write the ransom note. That's not how these things work, right? You don't take that risk. Why would you do that? It makes no logical sense. It is incompetence at the highest form. But if you are in a panic, you're going to grab a piece of paper and whatever, you're going to start writing in this stuff. It's just insane. Look the ransom note up online and read it, or watch that documentary. I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. So they came to the conclusion in this doc that Burke Ramsey got upset. Something happened where he picked up the mag light and hit JonBenét Ramsey over the head. Now, when they do a test in this documentary with a mag light and a skull and some flesh, not somebody's real skull. Obviously, it's I think it's sheepskin, or I forget what it is. Anyway, they were able to recreate pretty accurately the size and the dimensions of the gash in the skull with this mag light. Does that mean that's what happened? No, but it's interesting. It's definitely compelling, and the mag light was there. And I think I stand to be corrected on this, but I think the Ramseys didn't even know how the flashlight got there or something, or they didn't know whose it was or whatever. But it was there. It's there in crime scene photos. It's their light, you know. There's even a crime scene video, like a walkthrough. It's creepy. It's eerie because there's no sound, and it's from 1996, so it's like total VHS high, or maybe high 8 quality, so it's really kind of, creepy. But there's a crime scene video that they walk through, and so they film everything. It's on YouTube, I believe. But this is something that has always fascinated me for years, and but at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to the ransom note, the fact that the writing changed, like the writing was and then it changed as it went along. It's 2.5 pages. The tiny idiosyncrasies of all the shit matches Patsy pretty well. The bonus, her being in the same clothing, the fact that the body was left there in the basement, they didn't even take it. So what is the incentive to fork over $118,000 then if you don't take the body? All that, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And it says, and of course, having that younger voice on the 911 call. I'm not 100% convinced it is what they said. It could very well be what they said it was, but definitely it's a younger voice. With my experience, and this guy's experience as a professional audio engineer, I happen to agree with his conclusion. It is a younger voice, which tells me that Burke may have been up all night too. I don't know. But it is a very, very strange case. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to. Yeah, this is. Yeah. Yeah, it just talks about the discovery of the body. It says at 1 p.m., Detective Arndt asked John Ramsey and Fleet White, a family friend, to search the house to see if anything seems amiss. They started their search in the basement. John opened the latched door, which Officer French had overlooked, and found his daughter's body in one of the rooms. JonBenét's mouth was covered with duct tape. A nylon cord was found around... Nylon cord was found... cord was found around her wrists and neck, and her torso was covered by a white blanket. John picked up the child's body and took it upstairs. When JonBenét was moved, the crime scene was further contaminated, and critical forensic evidence was disturbed for the returning forensics team. Each of the Ramseys provided handwriting, blood, and hair samples to the police. John and Patsy participated in preliminary interview for more than 2 hours, and Burke was also interviewed with the first couple of weeks following JonBenét's death. Yeah. It's, and some of their friends and family too. Like some of the Whites who were really good friends with Patsy and John. I stand to be corrected, but I think this was mentioned in the documentary. They're not friends anymore, and they wouldn't be interviewed on camera. There's actually, if you try to, and I don't know how many people are there now that were there then, but when you try to talk about it in that affluent neighborhood of Boulder, Colorado, nobody wants to talk to you. I fully believe that everybody fucking knows that the parents were responsible for that. But because of the reputations and the money and the power, nobody talks. Nobody talks. And because they're all too afraid to talk. But I would put my own money on it that the vast majority of people who are remaining silent about it are not remaining silent because they want to protect John and Patsy's name and no, I think it's because they're scared. They're scared because they know damn well something didn't add up. The whole fucking thing is dog shit. It's a fascinating case that I have always been fascinated in, and from time to time I will from time to time I will often, I should say, go back and watch, and I try to watch both sides as well, right? I have watched the theory of the intruder and the evidence that they provide for that. I've watched it. I've listened to it because I would not be doing myself a favor if I did not listen to the evidence that was presented with the intruder theory. And there's stuff that is presented with the intruder theory that could absolutely be possible. I just do not think it is probable. I think the other side is far too compelling. I just think it's too compelling. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And that, coupled with what the DA was doing and trying to protect them, and how they wouldn't talk to the police for so long, but they would go on CNN. No, we're going to go on Larry King, but we're not going to talk to the police. It doesn't make any... Listen, if your child is fucking murdered, the first thing you do, and you find the body, right? The first thing you do is you talk to the police. I mean, I know they did initially, but they shut it all down. I remember Linda Arndt said that when the body was missing, John was calm, cool, and collected. He was so calm that he was on the phone talking to his pilot, arranging his flight out of there. He was seen in the kitchen opening mail, just going through the mail. He was calm, cool. And and one of the big things I totally forgot. Fuck, I should have said this earlier. In the ransom note, it says that we're going to call you by a certain time. Right? We're going to call you by a certain time with more directions. That time came and went, and nobody said a fucking word. Now, Linda Arndt, being the police officer that was there, she was like, but she didn't say anything. She just took a mental note. Patsy Ramsey said, fuck all. John Ramsey said, fuck all. You would think that you would be watching that clock like a hawk when, I don't know, let's say like 10 o'clock came around and went, and the ransom, the small foreign faction never called. Wouldn't you be like, oh my God, they didn't call? Nope. Calm, cool, collected, opening today's mail. Another check for something that's really fucking weird. That wouldn't happen. Nobody said a thing. Why? Because they likely knew there wasn't going to be a phone call, because there is no small foreign faction, because they wrote the note themselves, so it slipped their mind as they were rolling on with the day that that's what they had written in this 2.5-page ransom note. So I don't buy it at all. I totally forgot about that very important fact. And that's a fact. Nobody said anything. And of course, there's always John Ramsey. Oh, well, we were so stressed and I didn't think of it, or I did, bullshit. Listen, I'm not a child, but I will equate it to my girlfriend, who I adore, who I love with all my heart, right? We've been together for 10 years. If she goes missing, I am not going to be twiddling my thumbs going through mail. I'm not going to be picking up the phone. Okay, I don't have a private jet. So what would be the equivalent of making plans? I pick up the phone and I call Bruce and I say, hey, Bruce, just want to make sure we're still on for going to see that movie next week. I'm not going to be fucking doing that. I'm going to be crying. I'm going to be hysterical. I'm going to be, what can I do? I'm going to be antsy. What can I do? And if somebody said that, hey, we're going to call you at 10 o'clock with more instructions on the kidnapping of your lady, I'm going to be watching that clock like it's nobody's business. Nobody's business. And when that time comes and goes and there's no fucking phone call, you bet your ass I'm going to go to the police or the police officers that, that's at my house and go, they didn't call. Oh my God, what are we doing? No, I'm just going to be sitting on the phone going, yes, you want to go see the bullshit. See, one thing that rich people, now I say this this is a generality, but I think sometimes when you're extraordinarily rich and you play in that world and you get caught up in that game, right? It's a very different world than what we play in, a very different world. When you are uber rich, right? It's a very, very different world, very different world. I'm talking like multi-millionaires, billionaires. They tend to be very bad actors, because they're so disconnected from reality that when something happens that is that doesn't usually happen to wealthy people, they don't know how to play the game convincingly enough. If John was smart, he would have been walking back and forth in his kitchen, not worrying about the mail, right? If John was smart, he wouldn't have picked up his phone to call his fucking pilot, making sure that the arrangements were still on or whatever the case he was doing. He wouldn't have done that. He would have been like, okay, what do I have to do? Oh yeah, I got to walk back and forth. Oh God, Joe, sorry, I'm just, but he's not, he doesn't because he's clueless. He's clueless because he could literally go down the street and buy 5 Ferraris. That's why he's clueless. He's clueless because he could literally take a 6-month vacation and it would, you know what I mean? He's clueless because he could literally buy, the movie theater that's down the street. He's clueless because he could buy you a fucking Porsche for your birthday. He could buy you 4 Porsches for your birthday. That's why he's fucking clueless. And sometimes these people don't understand how to play the game, the real world game that is more grounded than the world they play in when shit hits the fan. So they do things like write a 2.5-page ransom note, and nobody thought to say, hey, I know we could write that the bonus is exactly your bonus, but maybe we should, to try and deflect and say, hey, it must be somebody who knows me at work, but maybe we shouldn't do that because it also kind of looks suspicious as well. You know what I mean? They're not thinking about that shit because they're so fucking clueless. Anyway, it is fascinating to me. Again, it doesn't mean that they were responsible. It doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that at all. But when you start adding things up, it looks more and more likely based on probability. And that's why I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Now, if you disagree with me, that's fine. I couldn't give a frog's fat ass whether you disagree with me or not. You're entitled in the comment section below to be polite, to be cordial, and to explain your side and why you feel that it was an intruder that came in and the intruder sat there and wrote a 2.5-page ransom note in their kitchen after they murdered JonBenét. They did that. They felt so comfortable in doing that, they had a practice note. They wrote 1/2 page of a practice note. You're more than entitled to come in and tell me why that. No, I believe that they would totally do that. But keep it polite. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Right? We're not going to convince each other. I mean, you're not going to you're not going to convince me otherwise, and I'm not going to convince you otherwise. Right? That's the world, you know what I mean? But there's probably very little that you can bring to my attention that I don't already know, because I've watched all of the intruder stuff as well. And why am I not talking about that here in my thoughts? Because it doesn't convince me. Because I am not convinced. I think the other side of the coin is far too compelling. Far too compelling when you add up the discrepancies. and based on Occam's razor and probability. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean that Patsy and John murdered her. It could very well have been an accident. It doesn't mean that it was an intentional. But whatever happened that night, I do not believe that an intruder broke in and Patsy Ramsey just got up in the morning and dressed in the same fucking clothes she did the night before and found a 2.5-page ransom note with a practice note in the garbage written on her own notepad. I mean, I don't buy it. I'm sorry, I don't. I just don't. I don't buy it. And I do not believe that a parent would miss the ransom phone call and not even bring it up. I don't believe that. And again, when I say that, you know, when I'm talking about people who are uber wealthy, I'm speaking generally, right? And I rely on my audience to instill some nuance and understand that I'm speaking generally. You know, I'm not saying that every person out there who is rich is a piece of crap. Of course not. I'm not saying everybody out there who is extremely wealthy or even well off, okay, I'm speaking generally speaking, okay? Generally speaking. Let's make sure that we understand that. Anyways, let's go over to the chat room. Got about 20 minutes left in the show and see what you guys have to say about this. What do you think about it? We can talk about this. We can talk about something else if you want, but that's what I have to say, how I feel about the JonBenét Ramsey case in a, you know, compartmentalized sort of version. I mean, if I had a 5-hour show, I could go on and on and on and talk about other shit, but that's why that is really the smoking gun for me. That's why I am convinced. I'm not necessarily saying it was Burke, but I am not convinced that an intruder broke into that house and murdered little JonBenét Ramsey. I am not convinced of that at all. And that ransom note is the smoking gun. It's hilarious. It's comically bad, in my opinion. Anyway, Holly Klein says, what are your thoughts on Lou Smith and his investigation of the case? Yeah, I mean, I listened to his side of it. I watched, all about the window and the briefcase and the DNA and I just think there is more compelling evidence to counter it. When I listen to his side, I think, yep, it's there. I see what he's talking about, for sure. But I just think the other side is far more compelling when we talk about probability, and that's what it is for me. When you have professional handwriting experts examine the handwriting and come to conclusions, and you look at, it's just, and again, I'm not an expert, but it wasn't just the experts in that documentary either. There's been handwriting experts that go back to the 90s news reports. I mean, watch some of those, and I believe this is an O.J. Simpson thing, 100%, that most people kind of go, yeah, 100%. I don't know how Burke died. How JonBenét died. There's compelling evidence that comes up with some theories, but I do not believe it was an intruder. And I would bet money on it. If somebody said, we have the answer 100%, I'd bet money on it. And I mean like the real objective answer. Like suddenly there was like divine intervention that said, okay, here's the real thing. I would go, I bet $1,000 on that it's not going to be an intruder. That's how convinced I am. Because it doesn't add up. If you are unfamiliar with the case, if you are just hearing about it for the first time through me, or if you have sort of a surface level understanding of it, I implore you to do your own due diligence. Look at both sides, but do your due diligence and take a look at the case. Listen to the people that were there. The lead investigator on it quit because he couldn't take it. He thought it was total bullshit. So do your due diligence, look at it, and let me know your thoughts. But that's what I believe. All right, I don't think I missed any super chats. Let me just take a quick look here. I don't believe I did. No. Okay, just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Let me see here. The horror counselor sends in a question, says, Dave, would you consider doing a McRae live based on UFO sightings? At least the ones with a lot of probability, or perhaps ones that can't be explained. I think that would be fun. Definitely be a lot of fun. I would love to do that for sure. I think I just have to sort of pick maybe a couple and then kind of run with that or something. But I mean, listen, it's no secret. I definitely believe in other intelligent life in the universe. I think the universe is too vast and too large for there not to be. I'm not saying I believe in the Hollywood depiction of aliens and, Independence Day and signs and all that kind of mumbo jumbo. But I do believe that that the probability, again, is high based on the amount of stars, the amount of galaxies, the vastness of it. Just does it. I think the probability is low that we are the only intelligent life out there. I think it is so arrogant and self-indulgent to think that we are it. That sure, there's life out there, but it's nothing but microbes and things like that. Like, nah, I don't know. I mean, that exists too, sure. But I also think it's naive, although I do understand why we have to investigate and search in this manner, because it's all we know, right? We, understanding the laws of physics and how the universe works is forever changing. And, but just because, Earth, just because life has flourished on this planet with this set of circumstances doesn't mean that there aren't other planets or situations out in the universe where they don't require oxygen or they require another gas or something. I mean, I understand why we can't go searching for life thinking that. We have to go by what we know and what our understanding is of the universe and life. But I've always been open to the fact of just because a planet doesn't have oxygen doesn't mean there isn't life there. Maybe life as we know it, but maybe there's something else there. Or, maybe there is a certain race or life out there that is able to survive in minus 500 degrees. Who knows, right? Like, I mean, we don't know. Life as we know it to be? No, obviously not. And that's how we have to investigate. But I'm always open to a lot of things, because if there's one thing that we've been able to prove, our understanding of the universe is very small, very, very small, especially when it comes to space. We know more about our oceans than we do. We know more about space than we do our oceans. So, I mean, that should tell you a lot right there. And we know very little about space in the big picture. We know, we know a lot, but certainly we're not trendsetters in that sense, for sure. Frank Riker sends in a super chat. Thank you very much, Frank, and says, for the sexy Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster believing MFers in the chat. Yes. Bigfoot, I tend to, years and years ago, Bigfoot, there was certainly, I think it's Gigantopithecus or something it's called. I do believe there was a Bigfoot maybe at one time. I do not believe in the Patterson video from 1960, what was it, 68 or 67 or whatever it was. I don't buy into that. I know a lot of people do. A lot of people will die on a hill and saying, yep, 100%. There is a guy that came out years and years later, I forget his name, who said he was the guy in the costume. There's video about it. You can watch it on YouTube. They tell about the story. Yeah, I totally think it's fake, 100%. I believe if Bigfoot is real, then he's an interdimensional being. I do not believe that Bigfoot that we would not have found a Bigfoot carcass. We would not. That doesn't mean there aren't cool Bigfoot documentaries that I've even watched. It's like, oh, it's kind of cool. It's kind of fascinating. I just think the probability is low. I think the probability is low that we would not have, especially in this day and age, found a dead body, found, something, I just think it's strange. Loch Ness Monster, same thing, Loch Ness Monster. That very famous photo of Loch Ness's head, Nessie as they call it, its head like this, it's fake. That actually came out years ago, that was fake. I know there's other shit too that they've capture. But that's usually like the famous one you always see. It's fake. It's been out that it's been fake for years. Jonathan Grant sends in £5 and says, "Hey Dave, great show as always. Not sure if you know, but The Boy Behind the Door is on Shudder and it's really good." Okay, I will have to check it out. I have not heard about The Boy Behind the Door, but I will. I'll check it out. Hans Gruber says DB Cooper was in the Bigfoot Patterson film. Yeah, DB Cooper. Yeah, that's another strange thing, right? That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool mystery for sure. That's really cool. And I think they even found like banknotes or something on a beach somewhere years later or something like that. I can't remember if that proved to be legit or not. But that's a fascinating story as well, for sure. Let me see here. Let me scroll on. Corey Dean says, "Dave, you should do a whole McRae live about space and galaxies and stuff. Would be very interesting and a fun show, I think." Yeah, I mean, I'm not obviously I'm not a astronomer or an astrophysicist or whatever. I mean, I know very little about the universe and space. I just find sort of time dilation and the theory of relativity and quantum physics. I find the concepts and stuff very fascinating. I don't know if I could do a whole show. I mean, I can't talk about it in depth. I don't know a lot about it and how it works, but I just find some of the concepts really interesting and really fascinating. And I don't know. Got to get a haircut. My hair's starting to come out. Time to get a haircut. Let me see here. Andreas Mendez says, "There's no doubt that your chances of getting away with a crime increase with wealth. This is true in every country on earth." That's true too. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure it is, right? Because everybody's got a price. And if you are uber rich, and again, I'm not talking about people who are just well off. I mean, there could be some people in the chat. Well, there could be some people in the chat that are multi-millionaires. I don't know who you guys are. You guys don't know me. I don't know you. But I'm talking about like uber rich, right? Uber wealthy, like worth tens of millions of dollars, and even billions of dollars, right? I mean, the fact that Jeff Bezos, and again, I understand the principle of it, but the fact that, he goes up into space and, he's worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's what he decides to do, right? It's a dick measuring contest for sure. But anyway, it's fascinating. But yeah, no, we're talking about like uber rich, right? When you are, and not that John Ramsey was like uber rich, but he was well off and certainly capable of being in a position where he's detached from reality. And I'm not, again, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that you cannot be a good person, with a good heart and give back and be normal for all intents and purposes and be extremely uber rich. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I think there's certain behavior that was done between Patsy and John that just speaks to me as disconnected from reality. I just think that if you were really paying attention to what was going on, you wouldn't make the choices that you made because you'd want to keep up the charade. You'd want to keep up the keeping up with appearances, as they say, right? You'd want to play that game a bit more. He doesn't have to break down and cry, but he also doesn't have to sit there checking his mail, you know what I mean? Or calling his pilot or, whatever the case is, and not mention anything when the time comes and goes. That would be on your mind. That would be on your mind for sure. And when the time comes and goes and nobody says anything, and Linda Arndt said, nobody said anything. And she said, "I didn't say anything. I just filed it away." It was very strange. And it is strange. Like, come on. That doesn't necessarily mean there could not be a reasonable explanation for it. I forgot. I was so overwhelmed. I just forgot. Okay, right? Okay. But what is the probability, right? Your daughter is missing. Your baby, your angel, your 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face. No, but you know what I mean? Your 6-year-old kid, right? And it just seems unlikely that John and Patsy don't say anything. It seems a little unlikely, in my opinion. That's how I feel. It's my opinion. I'm sticking with it. Harry Hagan says, Dave, I believe OJ was there, but I'm not sure he actually was the killer. He had caught Nicole before with another man and didn't kill her. Foreign DNA found on Nicole, 2 different set of footprints. There may have been somebody else. Yeah, there may have been, but I don't believe OJ is not. I don't believe that OJ, I don't believe his story at all. And keep in mind, just because he caught her with somebody before and doesn't mean that it wouldn't have escalated to that point, right? It doesn't mean that, OJ, we know, used to beat Nicole all the time. He would beat the shit out of her. We know this. So that doesn't mean that it would escalate to murder. But if he's capable of beating the crap out of her, he was a very jealous person. And was there somebody else there? Maybe. But I don't believe his story that he wasn't there, and that he's just like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. And I'm going to spend my waking days finding the killer. Yeah. How did that work out? Did he spend his waking days between 95 and 2008 when he was arrested and put in prison, right? Because that was 13 years. I'm going to find Nicole's killer. No. And why would you write a book, albeit, no, I'm just pretending, a book called If I Did It? Why would you do that? That makes no fun. How disrespectful is that to your own children who you had with Nicole Brown? Nobody who's innocent writes a book called If I Did It. You got to have some real mental, cognitive, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. OJ, to me, guilty as me tapping my head right now. But to your point, Harry, could there have been somebody else there? Maybe. But I don't believe OJ was not there. And I don't believe he didn't kill her. I fully believe he is absolutely capable of killing her. And he got he had the gash on his finger and I fully believe he's capable. Could there have been an accomplice? Maybe. But I don't believe he's innocent. Not by any stretch of the imagination. All right, 5 more minutes left in the show, folks. About 5 more minutes left in the show. Let's see here. Who else we got? Andreas Mendez says, was Christopher Walken present when Robert Wagner killed Natalie Wood? I think there's definitely some evidence that points to that. For sure. There's definitely some evidence that point to that. Let me see. Let me scroll back here. I think I got the super chats, right? The boy behind the door, Frank Riker super chat. I think I did. Okay, well, if you're planning on sending in one, make sure you send it in the next 5 or 6 minutes or so, because it's time to go. Jonathan Grant says, OJ's book, I remember that, damn. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was supposed to be a farce, like a satirical, okay, listen, I didn't do it. Okay, I didn't do it. But if I did do it, no, but why would you even think of, listen, I didn't murder her. I did not murder her. I had nothing to do with it. Do you understand me? I had nothing to do with it. Absolutely, unequivocally, nothing. But if I did do it, this is how I would have murdered your mother. Hey, kids, now listen, I didn't murder your mom, but if I did, this is how I would have murdered the fuck out of your mother to the point where she was nearly decapitated. But I didn't do it. But if I did, if I was going to do it, if I wanted to do it, if I was thinking about doing it, and I actually decided to do it, this is how I would have done it. Are you fucking kidding me? And that's not, folks, that book exists. Ron Goldman's sister, I believe, tried to get it banned or something, or maybe it's out there now. I can't remember. Oh, it's a fucking confession. 100%. No, it's not. Absolutely. Imagine doing that to your own children. Because like I said, I think he's got 2 girls, if I'm not mistaken, with Nicole Brown. Maybe it's a girl and a boy, but I thought it was two girls. Imagine that. Your dad writes a book. Hey, I didn't murder your mother, but if I did, here's how I would have done it. Are you kidding me? Like, you can't make this shit up. Disconnected from reality. You can't make this shit up. Like, you just can't. Fucking blows my mind. Who does that? If you actually are innocent, you really are innocent, and you're like, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea. No idea. Why would you do that? That makes no sense. Is it possible that he's innocent and he just wanted to is it Yeah, of course it's always possible. But is it probable? No. No. No, it's not. Darren sends the juice in that fucking glove. Yeah. Oh, yeah, shit, I forgot about the Robert Wagner thing. Yeah, that's another one. That's hello, I was not there. The shoes, come on. Hello. I'm innocent. It's funny shit. All right. 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes to go. Hey, super chat did come in from Hans Gruber, my man. Sends in $5. Says, rich people do have better chances of getting away with crime, but they also become targets of elaborate and detailed schemes. Well, that's true, but also poor people do as well. Like old ladies, old men. I mean, there's a lot of extortion shit that goes on out there. I agree with you because they have money. Yes, I get what you're saying. But people take advantage of people all the time. But you are right. Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Again, I always say that we live in a world where both things can be true, right? Kevin Spacey can be an incredible actor and a scuzz-sucking piece of shit. Now the Michael Jackson thing, I know is a bit of a hot topic, hit a bit of a hot button. I tend to fall on the camp that I do believe that he behaved inappropriately. I do believe that 100%. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't one of the greatest entertainers in the history of show business. He was. He was an amazing fucking entertainer. Absolutely. Hands down, one of the greatest cultural icons of the 20th century, one of the greatest musical performers of all time. But that in and of itself doesn't mean that he was incapable of the things he was accused of. I know he was found innocent. I know some people, I know those kids that came out, said this on oath, but they came out later and apparently they said something different. I know all that. But there's a lot of strange things that surround him. And I think both things can be true. We have to get past this idea. I'm not saying definitely he was. I'm just saying I tend to side with the camp that I think he was doing some shit he shouldn't have been doing. That's me. You can feel differently, and that's fair. But the thing that I think we have to remember is that, and I say this all the time, that, both things can, just because you have a certain level of success, a certain level of talent, a certain level of prestige, doesn't mean that you are the public image and persona you want your public to think you are. It doesn't mean that. So I agree with what you're saying, though. I do agree with what you're saying. Yep, it does happen too. It does happen. 100%. Thanks, Hans. Thank you, Hans. Appreciate that. Oh, yeah, folks, check out Tabitha's Etsy shop if you want to buy some scented candles and stuff. Awesome shit there. Thank you, Tabitha, for putting that in there. I always forget to mention that. I really appreciate that. Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby, yeah, there's another thing. I don't believe for one fucking second that he's innocent. Not at all. Not at all. And he did not get released because they found him innocent, because they found evidence that said he was innocent. They got him, he was released on a technicality. Now, that doesn't mean that the technicality should not be upheld and it was just a simple kind of throwaway. No, unfortunately, he should never have been on trial. I hate to say it, but based on the agreement that was made, he should never have been on trial. Okay? But that doesn't mean the reason he was released was because new evidence had been brought forward that exonerated him, that was like, oh, he is innocent after all. That's not why he was released. He wasn't released because they found new evidence pointing to his innocence. He was released because he should never have been convicted in the first place based on the agreement, not because of any innocence. Right? So those are two completely different things. Do I think he's guilty? Yes, I do. I do think he is. I do think he is. But again, that's me. That's me. Anyways, folks, listen, that is going to do it for me for episode 196 of McRae Live. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on JonBenét Ramsey. Remember, keep it civil, keep it polite, even if you disagree with me. Keep it mature and appropriate. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. If you're just going to start going off on a tangent and long diatribes, it will either get removed or I won't have to remove it because the YouTube algorithms will pick it up as spam. That sometimes happens too. I sometimes will get accused of deleting comments. I don't delete anything. If your comment doesn't show up, then it is likely either because you are a dick and you're saying something completely wildly unacceptable, like the N-word or something ridiculous like that. Or it's because for whatever reason, YouTube has picked up on something that thinks that you're spam and it goes into a folder that I have to approve. So that's why. So that's why I say be polite, be professional to avoid that. And let me know your thoughts. I'd like to know. Thank you to my great moderators, Frank Riker, Tabitha Shore, Darren Sands, and Chris Baber for doing what you guys do. I really appreciate it. You guys are amazing. Thank you to the few Super Chat questions that came in today and the non-Super Chat questions, of course. I always appreciate you guys supporting the channel in that way. Have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, folks, and I will talk to you soon. Cheers.